Okay, well, hello. We are moving on to the second session of the Big Book Study, which is the preface and the forewords, which will take us more than one session. They're actually power-packed with information. Okay, just a reminder that this is not an AA meeting. We're here to learn specific facts, history, and context for the textbook Alcoholics Anonymous, which was first published in 1939. Because we have more content to cover than time to cover it, please hold your questions to the last 10 to 15 minutes and we will open up the parking lot for questions and discussions. This is your course. Please help us adhere to our common welfare and help the facilitator start and end on time, manage disruptions, and participate in the parking lot discussion. So some other suggested books and materials for the Big Book Study that we suggest and that we'll probably use throughout the course of the study is the Anonymous Press edition of Alcoholics Anonymous, Pass It On, Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers, Varieties of Religious Experiences by William James, which is the only other book mentioned in our Big Book in the first 164 pages, a dedicated notebook, a dictionary, and I've added another one, which is the annotated AA book by Frank D. That one is really great for cross-referencing. Okay, so we're going to jump into the preface and the forwards to the first, second, and third edition. So I learned this before the fourth edition was out, which is probably dating myself at this time, but that's all right. So the Roman numerals are different in the third edition to the fourth edition. And so today we're going to be referencing the third edition. However, we have already made a chart on the differences in the Roman numeral page numeration between the third and fourth edition. And I realized that there is already a fifth edition coming out. So we'll have to expand our chart probably once we get there. And this is a great example of why a workbook would be an awesome tool and not flipping around. So when I did this section, like at the Alano Club in front of, live in front of a group of people with a whiteboard and stuff, there was so much distraction at this time because everybody was flipping around depending upon the edition that they had. So that's why we paused and made this. All right, so let's dive in right at the beginning at the preface. There is some really important information in the preface. This is the fourth edition of the book Alcoholics Anonymous. The first edition appeared in April 1939, and in the following 16 years, more than 300,000 copies went into circulation. The second edition was published in 1955, reached a total of more than 1,150,500 copies. The third edition, which came off press in 1976, achieved a circulation of approximately 19,550,000 in all formats. And here we go. Because this book has become the basic text for our society, let's pause there for a moment. What is a basic text? That's a textbook. It contains factual, specific instruction that's meant to be studied. I find this very powerful. We are not just simply reading this like a novel. This is a textbook meant to be studied. So think back to your days as a student, and you were given a textbook in chemistry or math, which were my favorites. And you didn't just read the chapter and then all of a sudden you mastered that chapter, right? There was a lot of going back, and at the end of the chapter, there was usually comprehensive questions, and then there was a quiz. And that is because that's how we learn. That's how we process the information and make it cement within our being. And in my experience, I was in Alcoholics Anonymous for multiple years before I came across a Big Book Study. And when I came to the Big Book study, I felt like it was the first time I had ever heard the message when another person took me through the Big Book study. It's like it was unlocked. And that was a pivotal moment in my life that completely changed me. So I really want to reiterate that this is a textbook that's meant to be studied. There are so many meetings out there that are called AA Big Book Study. And what the normal format, from my region in Southern California, is that we go around the meeting, we read a chapter or we read a paragraph, and then you just randomly share whatever, right? And oftentimes people aren't even sticking to the topic of what we just read. And for me, that's an ineffective way to study. Everybody has, their way of learning and stuff, but I found that the way this is set up, like school, was a more effective way for me to learn the material in our textbook. And you never master it, right? We continue to grow. And the other thing I want to say is that we constantly give this away. I will be showing you evidence as we go through this Big Book study of how it's of utmost importance to take others through the book and constantly pass this on. That's how I stay in fit spiritual condition. So if you want to master something, you teach it, right? So as you're receiving the Big Book study, that is extremely powerful, but it's even more powerful when you strenuously work to give this to someone else. So we are students. We are perpetual students of the Big Book. All right. I love this so much. Forward to the first edition. This is the foreword as it appeared in the first printing in the first edition in 1939. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Who is the we? This is really, really important. When I attend a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, again, the format here in Southern California is we read a portion of how it works at the beginning of every meeting. And we hear, if you want what we had and are willing to go to any length to get it. Who is the we and what did they have, right? The newcomer isn't going to know this, or maybe even some long-term people aren't going to know this. We look around the room and we think about the current attendance of Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, I'm sorry, those aren't the same people that were sitting in the rooms when this was written. What did they have, and is it different than what we have today? Do I have it? This is where I practice introspection that we talked about last week, being rigorously honest with myself. Do I have what the first 100 men and women have? Did I do what they did? This is where the honesty part comes in, right? So right here in the first sentence in the foreword, it tells us who the we is, which is the word used throughout the book. We are the first 100 men and women that recovered. It doesn't say recovering, constantly recovering. It says recovered. So we have some cross references here just on the first sentence. Let's go to page 58, the second paragraph. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. Oh my gosh, now I'm thinking about this paragraph in a totally different light, right? The we is the first 100 men and women. Now I ask myself, what did they have? That is answered on page 25 in the second paragraph, which says, the great fact is just this and nothing less, that we, the first 100 men and women, have had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us, which we could never do by ourselves. I'm going to ask myself, do I want that? Right? And think about it. How many meetings have you attended, and how often is this mentioned? So I think we definitely just need to focus on the material in the textbook and really understand the message that's coming out in the first 164. And yes, I do want that. I want freedom. I definitely want freedom. And I apologize for these sounds in the back. I have my dog with me today, and he is eating a peanut butter filled Kong. So I have to keep him in the room with me at the moment. Okay. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. Think back to the last session we did in session 1. What do we have to be convinced of, right? Remember the original manuscript. A, B, and C. If we are convinced of A, B, and C, then we are now at step 3. So this is further evidence that the first part of the big book, the investigation, is designed to convince us of A, B, and C. So no further authentication will be necessary. What is further authentication? It's continued drinking and using. We have 2 options here. We can have an open mind and become convinced based on the evidence in the textbook, or we can continue to drink and use until we're absolutely beaten into a corner so we have an open mind. That's all we need, right? We need an open mind, willingness, and honesty. And we get that 2 ways, either by continued drinking and using till you're absolutely fully desperate, beaten into the state of being desperate, or you can have an open mind and go through the investigation of the big book and become convinced that way. As we go through the study, you will see that the word prejudice is used so much in this book, right? And the word prejudice for our context means a preconceived idea without due examination or knowledge. A preconceived idea without due examination or knowledge. And what we will find out is that we have been prejudiced around the word God, around a higher power. We have a spiritual malady. And this is all about setting that prejudice aside and getting a new attitude and a new relationship with God. And the word new means something that didn't exist before. So I'm not taking my old idea of God, trying to shine it up and continue to use it. That never worked. If I had known what God was, or even enough closer to the truth, I wouldn't be dying of spiritual malady. I literally have to face my prejudice I have around this concept of a higher power. And that's why we have one of the requirements is an open mind to all spiritual concepts. So you can get beaten into this willingness, beaten into an open mind through further drinking and using, or you can stop right now and say, I am going to proceed like a scientist, and I'm going to go through this investigation and really find the truth. That's it. Can you do that? A lot of people cannot do it. We will find out there is a solution that accepting the spiritual path it's much harder for some people than others, in the respect that they just cannot let go of their old ideas around God. So we think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. And besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. So here are some of the facilitator notes that you can refer to when you are taking someone through the big book. We talked about the we is the first 100 men and women. Do I want what they have? We did that. And what does it mean to be recovered? Well, this is a space of controversy within our fellowship, right? People will say, oh, you never recover, you never recover. And I'm like, did you read the book? Because that word is actually used, right? So let's talk about what it means to recover and go to the bottom of page 84. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time, and they're referring to step 10, sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as if from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it. Neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. This is our experience. This is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. So we have a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Knowing that, it becomes of paramount importance for me to understand, how do I keep in fit spiritual condition? And we will continue to answer that question throughout the Big Book study. But I'm just going to ask you real quick to go to page 89 and read the first sentence. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. Check your experience. Have you done intensive work with alcoholics? Have you really abandoned yourself to the idea of helping others to a solution to their problem of alcoholism? When I literally was so desperate and convinced of A, B, and C, I abandoned myself to the idea of taking other people through the Big Book study. And I was, how alcoholics are, we do extreme things. When we decide to start something new, we go all out, right? So the guideline I was given was 3 hours a week. So 3 times a week, 1 hour each, either taking the same person through the book or 3 different people. And if you have no one to take through the book, then you spend that 3 hours fishing for a prospect. And where are you likely to find an alcoholic? At an AA meeting. So we'll get into more about how you find people and how you approach people, because the Big Book does say we make the approach. Okay. So it is already clear that I must have a spiritual experience to recover from alcoholism. Let's talk about that for a minute. I remember when I first came to AA, which was, gosh, I'm in my 50s, and that was when I was 17 years old. And what they had told me was, take what you want and leave the rest. Well, there wasn't much that I wanted. I mean, this was all a bunch of spiritual stuff. I'm a sick drug addict. I don't want anything to do with spirituality or God or anything. As far as I'm concerned, it was, that wasn't on my side. So I didn't think that that was the right thing to say to a newcomer, take what you want and leave the rest. And as I go through the Big Book, I see that the word must and the word requirement is used often. All right, so now we know that we have to have a spiritual experience, what is a spiritual experience? We went over that in the first session. There are actually 7 attributes of a spiritual experience, and you can find the handout on that. It comes from William James' Varieties of Religious Experience. And how do you get it? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. It's all about you recovering, and how do you get there? Okay, so am I truly creating an opportunity for others? Let's go to page 19. Middle of a page. 2 sentences from the bottom of the second paragraph. It says, many could recover if they had the opportunity we have enjoyed. And are you creating an opportunity for another person to recover? Right? Only an alcoholic can help another alcoholic. We are the alcoholics. There's no other alcoholics out there. I mean, we are it. So by you not carrying the message with your particular voice, your particular experience, you are denying another person the opportunity to recover. My sponsor used to say there is a nut for every wrench. You know, we are there. The message is the message. AA is a singular program. It's one program. But each of us has like a different voice, a different way that we approach it, and a different way that, attractive to others. So you particularly have something that is attractive to someone else. And by not being available and not working to create that opportunity for someone else, you are denying another person their recovery path. Yes. So this says, does it look like a meeting at Hot Java and talking about myself? So Hot Java is a coffee shop, and it's a place where a lot of people, sponsors and sponsees, will go and with the 12 and 12, not the big book, and apparently work the steps. So what I see when I go down there is a sponsor giving a drunkalogue or talking about themselves at great length and not really carrying a message. So of course you share personal experiences so that the identification process happens, but that has its limits. At some point you need to carry a message that has depth and weight to the other person. And the Big Book study provides that. Just stick to the textbook. Okay, I have a lot to say about that, as you can see. Why does God give us the gift of gab? This is just something I find hilarious. I myself am a talker. Okay, I love talking. I can talk ad infinitum. And so can many other people in Alcoholics Anonymous. We are talkers. We got the gift of gab. But there's 2 ways that we can use that. One, page 62, self-centeredness, right? Let's go there real quick. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our trouble. So listen to the people in the fellowship, listen to other alcoholics. Are they talking about themselves most of the time? Or have they pivoted and used their gift of gab to carry the message of our textbook? That right there is a great way to practice discernment when you are choosing a sponsor or choosing anyone that you want to take guidance from in our program. I think that we were, I can't prove it, but I think we were given this gift of gab because we're supposed to be talking a lot about the message, not so much ourselves. So I'm either in a selfish place or I'm in an unselfish place. Okay, so what is the main purpose of this book? Is it to get you to a 10, 90, and 90? Oh my God, like that's not even mentioned in the Big Book. 90 and 90 is not even mentioned in the Big Book. Meetings are mentioned twice, which we will go over. It's only mentioned twice in our book, and both times it says the purpose is for the newcomer. Nowhere in here does it say, when I have an obsession or a thought or a desire to drink, to pick up the phone, call my sponsor, and attend a meeting. It does not say that. Yet that was what was hounded and hounded in a woman's recovery home, in therapy, and in meetings. This is the message that it's carrying, and it didn't help me. I was dying behind that. The main purpose of this book is to have a spiritual experience. And it gives us very specific things that we can do to get there. So we can cross-reference. It says here, these pages are so convincing, right? Now let's go over to page 45, the second paragraph. Okay, well, let's go to the first paragraph, first real paragraph. Lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to find a power which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main objective, its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem, right? And remember, the mind that is the problem cannot solve the problem. And we have some cross references here. On page 42, which talks about the alcoholic mentality, right? The alcoholic mind is the problem. So if the mind is in the problem, how are you going to use that to solve the problem? It's a broken tool in this respect. The ego, the alcoholic mind, the ego will not aid in its own destruction. It will actually do things to steer us off course. It will actively try to get you off course, right? And your course is on page 77. So let's go to page 77 just to make this clear. Third sentence on top of page 77. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. So being of maximum service to God and the people around us requires us to be of service, requires us to carry the message. The ego will actively try to stop you from doing that. It will say things, all kinds of different things all over the map, like, you're not good enough. You can't do this, blah, blah, blah. Or it will tear down the people that in your life that are trying to support you in creating this new activity and creating this new life. It will actively tear down the messengers in your life, the people who are supporting you and guiding you and trying to help you create this. It will actively try to tear them down. So you want to remember that here in AA, we're carrying a message and that we're messengers. You have to separate the message from the messenger. Just know that, because at some point the ego is going to attack the messenger, and you will just need to rely on the message at that point. All right. So it is important that we remain anonymous because we are too few at present to handle the overwhelming number of personal appeals which may result from this publication. Being mostly business or professional folk, we could not well carry on our occupations in such an event. We would like it understood that our alcoholic work is an avocation. So an avocation, when they put an A in front of the word, it means the opposite, right? So a vocation is our occupation and profession, the way we earn money. Put the A in front of it, it's the opposite of vocation. It's in addition to one's occupation. It's not for money and is absent the profit motive. And you'll see in the long form of the 12 traditions, it specifically says not for money. And thank goodness that money is not involved in this, right? Because the solution is altruistic. Altruism means unselfish, constructive action for others. this isn't for sale. That's not for sale. If the only thing that's going to save my life is unselfish, constructive action for others, I'm not putting a price tag on that. And I don't want money involved in it, because then I've got nothing, right? I've got nothing. We need unselfish giving of ourselves, strenuous, vigorous work for others. So we are not an organization in the conventional sense of the word. There are no fees or dues whatsoever. The only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. Well, this later became the preamble, but they dropped the word honest here to prevent exclusion. So you see, honest is in the preface, but in the preamble, it just says the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking, which I'm sure you've heard a lot. And why is that? Perhaps we would argue with each other about who's being honest and who's not. So it's just best to leave it simple, a desire to stop drinking. So it dropped the word honest to prevent exclusion. Perhaps people would think they need to judge if someone is being honest or not and attempt to exclude them. So how honest are newcomers really? There is a sentence in our book that says, once in a while, he may tell the truth. And we have this common saying of, I'm not working an honest program. So remember from session 1 that honesty is an awareness of where you are at. It's introspective. Where am I along the 12 steps? All right, well, that was just the first foreword, so I think I'm going to stop there.